Yet another school shooting. The first week of January 2024 in Iowa, we had another one. Mickey with carrytrainer.com, Drew behind the cameras and editing desk. I just want to talk for a little bit about my thoughts on this stuff. First off, Dan Marburger, principal of that school, passed away yesterday. All reports show that he was a hero in every way, trying to protect the children there. And then, of course, Amir Joliffe, the 11-year-old boy, his nickname was Smiley, was killed by that monster. As I watched this unfold in the news, it's crushing, it's heartbreaking. I have children, I have grandchildren now. I think it's human, it's normal for all of us to put ourselves in that position. How would we feel? What would we think if that was our children's school? Worse yet, if that was our child that died. I'm in kind of a weird space. I train people with firearms for self-defense. We do some other self-defense training. We train people in emergency medicine for these horrific incidents. I was involved and am involved in fighting for firearm rights for many years in my home state and in other places. But at the same time, I'm also very much for anything that we can do that stops boys like Amir from being murdered while they're at school. I bet I'm going to say some things in this discussion that some of you aren't going to agree with. I'm going to say some things that are going to maybe offend some people. I'm going to say some things that might get you to unfollow. That's not my intention. My intention is to talk openly about my feelings on the matter. First of all, we have more guns per capita than any country in the planet. I firmly, 100% believe with all my heart our founding fathers were light years ahead of the rest of the planet when they enshrined our right to self-defense and protection from criminal predators or tyrannical predators in government by the private ownership of firearms. I firmly, 100% believe that with all my heart. I started to think, man, I'm not that old, right? I'm in my mid-40s. I was driving when I heard this news, and I shut the news off, and I just was listening to the thoughts in my head, thinking, what's changed from when I was a kid? And now most of us probably have thought about this. We've seen things like this. When I was a kid, there was a shooting team at my school, and boys came and went with their rifle and nobody ever got hurt. Or there were shotguns in the racks out in the parking lot at the high school, right? You've heard things like this. It's true. It's not some anecdotal thing. It's not some like flippant comment. It's true. As a 12, 13-year-old boy, I went on backpacking trips alone or with a friend for days into the forest. I'm not talking about camping in the backyard. I mean, we literally at 12 or 13 years old put backpacks on and disappeared for 4 or 5, 6, 7 days into national forests in northern Wisconsin. We'd take a couple of rifles, we'd target shoot. We had a great time. In hindsight, I wish I had eye and ear protection with me because I have hearing damage from some of those shooting endeavors. But my point is, we didn't hurt anybody or ourselves with those guns. And of course, accidents happen. They always will. This is not accidents we're talking about. We're talking about criminal activities, murder with firearms. So I sat and I thought, I'm like, what's different? And of course, any generation can look back and say things are different. We lost a friend a few years ago. Her name was Vivian. Vivian was old enough that when her family came from Canada to Florida, her father was a farmer, they traveled all the way from Canada to Homestead, Florida via horse and carriage. That's how old she was and how long ago she was born. And she told me, I can't relate to anybody. Things are just different. So things always change, but what's different just in the last 20, 30 years? So first of all, 1966, that's really the first school shooting. You can look that up down in Texas. And then maybe nothing happened for decades. Then Columbine happened, and then it was one after the next, after the next. And I think too often we try to just say, here's the problem, right? It's like our body's health, right? Oh, stop drinking soda pop and you'll be fine. Or don't eat butter and instead eat margarine, or eat butter and not margarine, right? We just try to like do these single dip switch polls and we think it's going to change everything. So I started writing some notes. Check this out. Here's some things I thought of. And now don't jump on me, but here's some things I thought of that didn't really exist when I was a kid as they do now. We are extremely taxed for our thought, our time. We are so spread thin because of stuff like this. We spend hours a day on social media, in the TV, in the phone, into YouTube. We spend hours a day. Our ability to just think and be is so spread thin. Video games. I'm not talking about playing Tetris or some such thing. Video games that glorify violence. Before you jump on me and say things like, I've got thousands of friends that play those games and don't do anything, we'll come back to it. Pornography. Porn back in the day was a magazine, and now you can punch something into the computer and see anything you want. Truth be told, I don't like to look at porn, and there's a reason for it. It's not religious. It's not because I think it's evil. I think it's bad for your brain. I think literally the images do something to our subconscious in an unhealthy way. We can attach religious connotations or anything else to it, but that's not what I'm talking about. We'll come back to that. Social media, as I started to talk about, we have a lack of accountability by parents. Every teacher I know says that in their time of teaching, they've had to do more and parents have wanted to do less. We've had 20 plus years of war. Yes, it's tapering off, but now look what's going on. We've got Ukraine. We've got what's going on in Israel. And the difference in the past, 20 years ago, the Gulf War in 91, there was some televised events. Now there's real-time feeds. You can go on the internet and in real time watch men have their limbs blown off. You can watch drone footage of airstrikes, of firefights. Literally, you can sit in your home and watch the horrors of war. You can see the things that only frontline soldiers once saw, or war correspondents. We've got an insane amount of debt. Not just the debt that our country has, but individuals. What does debt do? Debt's a burden. Debt weighs you down. Debt causes anxiety. It causes lack of sleep. It causes all types of stress. It might drive us to drink too much, eat too much, do drugs, etc. How about the normalization of pedophilia? And I'm not even just talking about the classical understanding of being a pedophile, of somebody committing sexual crimes against children. The idea of just sexualizing kids in general with all of the stuff that's gone on. Don't jump on me. I'm just observing what I see has changed since I was a child. Lack of a respect for authority. Call me a bootlicker. I still think that if you're a policeman, you should treat that person with some modicum of respect. On this note, I remember as a young man in my ignorance saying to a local cop in my community, you guys act like you're heroes and there's like nothing going on out here. Well, that's actually not true. Even a local copper is dealing with violent drunks, dudes beating up their wives. They're looking at all kinds of horrible things like kids in car crashes, people that hang themselves, blow their brains out. Horrible stuff that these men and women have to bear upon them. And I think sometimes we don't think about that stuff. A lack of respect for our history. We're tearing down monuments. We're changing and trying to rewrite history because through the optics of today, the things we know today, we look back and we say, shame on those people. Let's just not think about what they did, not understanding that we are here because of our history. We're, again, overtaxed for our attention in every way, shape, and form. Our food is trash. We're over-medicated. We're medicated with garbage. We have an obesity epidemic, diabetes, heart disease, cancers, things of that nature. When I was a child, there was a few kids in my class or around me that you would say maybe had ADHD or something. Now every other kid has this. Autism, things of that nature. I'm not a specialist on any of these things, but I have friends that are. I have a friend that we're going to do an interview with that works with children that are on the autism spectrum to help them develop tools to have healthy, productive lives. The number is thousands of % more instances today than like 50 years ago. There's reasons for that. We have vilified what it means to be a man. We have vilified what it means to be a man. I knew a girl that told me, who was a corporate girl, smart, educated. It was her life's mission to not be what her mom was. And what that meant was a woman that cooked, cleaned, paid the bills, was a mom. And I'm not subjugating women, but her mother chose to do that, and to her, she looked down on it. She said, I will never do that. I'm never going to iron clothes. I'm not saying that's what women should or shouldn't do. What I'm saying is we have vilified the idea of what a woman should be and what a man should be. Should is subjective, but we have vilified women that want to stay home and work in a garden and be moms. That was my mother's life's work. She's had 11 kids. She's wrote books on it. Do I agree with everything my mother thinks? Nope. But that's what she wanted to do. And she'd tell you, you can say anything you want to me. It was my choice to do that. Nobody made her do that. And we have vilified what it means to be a man, to work hard like those moms do, to go out there and be a protector, a provider, to teach their children to be protectors and providers. How about to be fit, to be agile, to be capable, not just of violence, but of lighting a fire, of catching food, of fixing a leaky roof, all those things. And of course, we have different aptitudes. My father's a great musician. He's not a great roof repairman. But do you have the ability to find somebody that is? We've destroyed the family unit. Now, I just read something the other day. People are staying married longer. So apparently there's some misinformation out there. I did a little research on this. Divorce rates are declining, and the idea that 1 in every 2 divorce or marriages ends in divorce, apparently is a fallacy. You can look that stuff up yourself. But we have destroyed the family unit. Remember, the reason we're talking here is about these school shootings, and I just began to kind of make a soup in my head of all the things that are here now that weren't there when I was a kid, or vice versa. Things that are missing now. So let's just look back through this. We have filled our little people's heads with violence, with video games, with movies, with all the crap that we can see on social media. Listen to me before you weigh judgment. We have made instant access to porn. Now look, any of you guys, girls on here, I'm 46 this year. When I was a kid, I definitely saw some porno magazines. Maybe some father had a VHS tape or something like that. And for the most part, it was people committing sex acts, right? Now, and I remember the first time that somebody ever showed me on the internet, they typed in boobs and we saw pictures of boobies. I mean, now you can find any and everything that you could possibly imagine. And of course, with every child having a small computer with an HD screen on it, you damn well know little boys and girls are looking up private parts and all the things that go with it. How do we not think this is affecting children? Now, come back to the video game thing. All my friends play those, I play those, I've never wanted to hurt somebody. Here's the problem, or the challenge rather. You're not a broken toy. You are not susceptible to being influenced like that. So maybe it's 1 in 10 million kids. And here is where I'm not a scientist, but maybe it's 1 in 10 million kids that has this susceptibility that if these dip switches are pulled, where somebody's bullying them, where maybe they have access to seeing violent images over and over again, maybe that pushes them past a point of no return. How many of you have looked at porn? And this is why I keep talking about it. I'm sure most of us have seen some type of porn. It's the most viewed thing ever in mankind's history. Most of us are not rapists, right? You go look up, you challenge you to do this, go look at how many people that have committed rape and sexual crimes have had pornographic addictions. You will find numerous studies, hundreds of studies on serial rapists and pedophiles having a deep desire to consume copious amounts of porn. Again, you could say, I look at porn for 2 hours a night, and I've never done that, because there is still something in your brain that stops you from committing evil against others. So am I suggesting, and here's the problem with laws, right? So let's look at the firearm for a minute. Lawmakers say, well, here's this one thing. If we just pull guns out of society, this won't happen. Well, we know that's not the case. We just saw some stabbings of children in Europe just in the last few weeks. We know that's not the case, because by and large, most people are not interested in hurting others. They're not interested in satiating some evil appetite that's deep down inside of them. So who is responsible for this 1 in a million, 1 in 10 million, 1 in 100 million child that is susceptible to going over the edge? I say we all are. This kid that just came into this school in Iowa looks like he had all kinds of signs, symptoms of being problematic. We talk about securing firearms often. People get mad about that. Do we need to make laws where all guns are locked up? No. But if you're a mom or a dad and you've got some son or daughter, usually sons, that are showing signs and symptoms of wanting to commit violence, you better do something. Because when a little dude like Amir ends up shot and killed at school and you did nothing, that's your fault. That is your fault. That's not Amir's fault for going to school. This kid sounded awesome. His nickname was Smiley. And now he's dead because some little broken toy asshole decided that the sad parts inside of him needed to hurt children. As I started this conversation, I was talking about trying to remember when I was a kid. I grew up with some guys that were criminals. A couple of them, a handful of guys went to prison, like real prison. I never knew anybody that said to themselves, I want to go kill children. I never knew anybody that said, I feel so bad, as such, I want to kill kids. I knew dudes that were violent, that got in fistfights. I've known several men that have been involved in violent encounters with multiple police officers and gone to prison for it. I've never known one of those guys when I was a kid to say, I want to go hurt children. There was still some sense of justice and right and wrong. They had no problem fighting men, be it evil or for good reasons, whatever the case they were fighting. They had no problem with it, but none of them wanted to hurt kids. So what's the deal? We have pulled so many dip switches with drugs, with medicine, with social media, with porn, with video games, with lack of parenting, with lack of respect for authority, with lack of fatherhood, with lack of motherhood, with lack of children being told, no, you're not allowed to do that, with a lack of people controlling access to all these things we've talked about, including firearms. We now have an epidemic of young boys that are so brokenhearted, they do not know how to relate to the real world, and they need a father or a mother, most likely both, preferably both, to redirect them. Locking up firearms is a start. Congress trying to ban firearms. It's lunacy. There are 330-something million Americans. There is like 400 million firearms. You're not getting rid of them. Not to mention, people are not going to turn them in. Not to mention, nobody's coming to knock on your door. Do the math. 400 million firearms. They're never going away. We have allowed this. We have allowed this. We have created a world where we have disconnected compassion from young men's hearts, and we have somehow connected them to this sense of evil this sense of weird justice where they want to hurt people. And we're blaming it on stuff. We're not blaming it on ourselves when it is our fault. I see parents, they complain about their kids' screen time, but then they hand them a tablet while they're at the restaurant. This is not I'm not on some vendetta here against these forms of communication. This is how I make a living. But there has to be some limits. When's the last time you sat down and just read a book with your kid? When's the last time you went and sat down? I'm going to use the word hate. I despise when I am with adults and they're playing on their phone. Some of you guys are my friends. It's obnoxious. It is immature. It is disrespectful. I wouldn't sit with you and read a comic book, but for some reason, for us to sit and play on these little screens, it's an addiction. No different than smoking, no different than shooting a drug. It's an addiction. We have allowed our children to become addicted to a pipeline into their brain. Let's continue. Ralph Waldo Emerson, probably my favorite poet. Ralph said, "A man is what he thinks about all day long." If you've ever taken a class with me, I mention that at least once in every class. Think about it again. A man is, or a woman, what he thinks about all day long. It's true. We are the sum of our thoughts. The scripture, the book of Proverbs, if you are a scripture reader, as a man thinks, so shall he be, or she. As a man thinks, so shall he be. We are the sum of the things we think about. Our children, these young killers, are the sum of the things they think about. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can see the tea leaves and see where this is going. If we do not stand up and say enough and then do something, leaders lead, right? We all want to yell at Congress or our state reps or somebody to do something. Who's leading your kids? Who's leading the people around you? It's up to you. If not you, then who? Last week, I was out in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and I stopped to visit the grave of William Ellery. We put up a short video on William. William Ellery was one of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. A little quick story on William. He was the guy whose house was burned. He was the one who was left destitute. He was 92 years old when he died. He was the second longest living signer of the Declaration. On the day that they signed the Declaration, William sat up over here as the men signed because he wanted to see them. He wanted to see their face. William said, "I wanted to look upon their face to see if they knew the gravity of the thing they were doing." Because he knew they were signing their death warrant. Why do I bring that up? Those were men. They lived with deeds, not words, deeds. Now we look and we vilify our history. We vilify teachers that talk about that history. We vilify men who act like men. We vilify women who act like women. We vilify people that say maybe playing a game, and I'm not against video games. But if your child is predisposed or has some type of issues and you are allowing them to do these things, you are feeding a beast. A man is what he thinks about all day long. What do you think happens when a kid spends the bulk of their formative years looking at a screen, looking at violence, looking at porn? What does that do to that little dude's heart and mind? I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. You think about that. What happens to you when you watch the news all day? Makes you angry, makes you anxious, doesn't it? What happens when you look at beautiful things? Art. Snowfall, like what's going on outside today, sunsets. How does that make you feel when you sit at the beach and you watch the sunset? Or when you sit and watch children play? How does that make you feel? Probably good. As a man thinks, so shall he be. I don't believe that there is some switch we can pull. We can't ban guns. We do need to increase the safety of our schools because there always will be a wolf that wants to come and eat the little sheep. There always will be a predator out there. We have many schools that there is zero to little training for even things like CPR. We definitely have tons and tons of schools. The majority of them do not have training for Stop the Bleed or TCCC or TECC. We have many schools that anybody can just walk right in because people put their head in the sand. People put their head in the sand and they don't want to think about it. Go to your school board and say, what is our safety plan? What happens if there's a tornado, a fire? Ask them if there's rally points. Ask them what type of communication they have with local EMS, with the hospital, with the sheriff's office, with the police departments. And you will find that in many schools, there is nothing planned. They're going to fly by the seat of their pants, which is why you see things happen where these schools get shot up and things don't happen quick enough because there was no plan, or there was a little plan, or there was a crappy plan. That's on us to force our school boards to make those plans because those wolves still exist out there. Look, I'm not against playing video games. I'm not against you looking at porn if you're an adult. I don't do it myself, and there's a lot of reasons why, as I told you. You are the sum of your thoughts. So too are your kids. If you see a young person that looks like they are being victimized by bullying, if they have a soft heart or they maybe can't cope with some stuff at school, you might need to get them some help. Is doping them up with medicine the thing? Again, I'm not a doctor, but apparently this stuff does not seem to be working. And when we look at the totality of what's going on in our schools, I'm sick of hearing about little dudes like Amir. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. We cannot be mad at Congress for wanting to do something. I think it's foolish. I'm tired of the gun people just being mad at Congress for trying to do something. They're people too. They're humans trying to do something. To be a citizen of a republic requires a thing called civic virtue. Civic virtue is not virtue in the religious sense of being virtuous. It means that you do your part, your civic duty, being a parent in the community, being a parent for your kids, picking up trash, voting, doing the right thing when nobody else is doing it, upholding the laws, the customs of our free society, standing up when somebody needs you to, not being silent when somebody's saying or doing the wrong thing. Young people see that. When they look back, what kind of father or mother will they see? Will they see a person that stood up for what was right? Will they see a person that they say, my dad stood in the gap, in the breach for the things that mattered? Or will they see a dad buried in his phone during dinner? Will they remember a mom who was addicted to TikTok? It's a freaking mental illness that we have given ourselves. We shoot ourselves up with this crap, and then we wonder why. There's no mystery. I'm not against any of these things. I am against not admitting the reality of it. Hold your kids tight. Teach them to do right. Teach them to fight if they need to. Hold your school boards accountable. Disconnect your kids from this pipeline of mental and spiritual degradation because it's not building them into good humans. Re-embrace manhood and womanhood. Re-embrace what it means to be a member of this republic. Study our history. Teach it to your children. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them.